Hello and welcome to Edukemy's YouTube channel. My name is Harsh Singh, and in this video we shall discuss the Gazette magazine for 31st August 2021, your daily guide to UPSC current affairs. Now, the hot selling articles in the market today are, first, from the Ministry of Commerce, it talks about curbing low-grade imports. That means trying to have some non-tariff barriers for low-quality imports. The second one is RBI's policy to make some changes in the microfinance structure in the country. And the third one is from NITI Aayog. It talks about infrastructure investment funds to be brought under insolvency and bankruptcy code. Why? So that we have more investment, more trusted investment from the retail sector. This day in history belongs to State Reorganization Bill 1956. Featured news of the day. Featured news of the day is on a different video, and rest of the discussion is on this particular video. Now, featured news for today is on the parliamentary oversight mechanism. We have discussed n number of articles understanding the role of government, understanding the role of opposition in the parliament, and they have not worked effectively in passing the laws in the last 4 sessions. And in this context, we will understand what is actually the role of parliamentarian, what is the important function of a parliament, and how is it being hurdled in these present times, and what is the way out and solution in the present context. This article becomes very important in this year particularly because we have seen very less functioning of the parliament and ineffective passage of bills in this session. Image of the day is on Hurricane Ida from USA. Terms and concept. The first one, Deeperville Wildlife Sanctuary, also declared an eco-sensitive zone. The second one is BH registration series by Ministry of Transport, important. The third one, new species being added by Zoological Survey of India. And the fourth one, West Nile virus. Editorials for today are one, how India should approach Taliban and establish relations with them. The second one is on criticizing the monetization pipeline. And the third one is India and climate change, how India is actually going ahead in this deal. And the case study is from NGO Pratham. So let's start the discussion. We have dedicated this day in history to the States Reorganization Bill because it was on 31st August that the President gave assent to this bill, 31st August of 1956. This bill was passed on the basis of recommendations of Fazal Ali Commission, and the main idea was to have new states created on linguistic basis. Snapshot 1 is on quality control orders by the Ministry of Commerce. Now, this department, promotion of industry and internal trade, it has said that it will expand its horizon of products in which it will ensure that low-grade imports, low-quality imports be not imported to the country. They can range from electronics to industrial machinery. Now, what usually happens when external trade happens, there are two kind of ways in which these kind of trade is curtailed. One is tariff barriers and one is non-tariff barriers. So, tariff barriers are the one where we place certain kind of custom duty, increased custom duty. So if we have increased custom duty, there'll be less incentive for the exporter to import the product in the country. The government used to have this mechanism, tariff barriers, increased tariff, increased percentage of custom earlier to ensure that products be not imported to the country, right? Now we are trying to have a policy departure. We will have non-tariff barrier. These are the kind of barriers which advanced countries like America, like countries in Europe, they impose. What are the kind of barriers they impose? They impose barriers like they will not import products which are created through exploitation of child labor. So as simple as that, right? Hygienic conditions, they are essential. So these are the kind of non-tariff barriers they have. India has introduced certain kind of non-tariff barrier this time. What is that? India has said that we will standardize the products. So a product which has quality lesser than a certain threshold, they will not import. And this standard will not only be for importer in India, it will also be for Indian manufacturing companies, right? So this standard will be set by Ministry of Commerce. It is good for Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is good for quality products in the country. As I mentioned, this is a policy shift for the country, and also tariff barriers are something which WTO opposes. But non-tariff barrier is something where there is a opaqueness, there is a thin line of difference between what WTO can oppose and how much the country can regulate, right? So this is why India has imposed this, right? This will also improve domestic output. How? Because if we are importing certain low-grade products and now we are stopping those imports, we have that scope for improving our domestic products itself. So aids Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, this is where quality control order, this is important to understand. So quality control orders are issued by various various ministries of having a bare minimum quality for the products. And I remember we had discussed one of the snapshots where we spoke about the minimum quality in railway production. Now, BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards. So this Bureau of Indian Standards, this is the organization which ensures that accreditation of bodies be done. Those bodies which can later rate the products. This body itself rates the products, but now it will install various bodies, right? For example, one in railways, one in India size. So this is an example. India size is an example. Then various mechanisms, for example, the imported products in electronics, one in auto sector. So it will have bodies, important bodies, which it will give authority so that they can later rate the products. So this will have bodies in every sector, and railway is what we discussed that day, right? Railway. Now, India size, standardization of this, the sizes in India, all will be controlled by Bureau of Indian Standards. And now imports also will be regulated through this. So very important development from the end of government. Second snapshot is on RBI's proposal to regulate microfinance policy. Now, presently RBI is the one which regulates microfinance. However, there are only 30% of the institutions which are NBFC microfinance institutions which are regulated by RBI. Rest 70% are not regulated effectively. So there is no standardization at all. Now, microfinance are the institutions which deal with lending to the micro people, right? So small loans to people in rural areas, urban areas for MSME development, etc. Right? This is where RBI says that the idea is to develop a standardized policy. Presently, if it is not standardized, what are the issues? The amount of loan which is lent, that is variable from one company to the other, and the amount of limit of loan for one individual, that is also not certain. So this makes the whole policy very haphazard, cumbersome, and opaqueness is also there. So therefore, the idea is to have a uniform policy, right? So for few examples of the same could be: one, overall permissible indebtedness limit. Now, the maximum amount of loan that one could carry is 50%. This is what the RBI has proposed, right? So in urban areas, the amount will be different, and the rural areas, the amount will be different. The maximum threshold up to which loan can be given, up to maximum 50% of what they earn in year, right? This is one standardization. The second one is constraint on borrowing. Now, presently, a borrower can lend only from 2 lenders as of now. This will be done away with. So this will go away. The third one, purpose specification. Now, the purpose for which the money has been taken, they have to be at least 50% for income generation purposes. This is where RBI says that no, let's remove this kind of restriction. People can utilize the money for varied purpose which are apart from income generation, yet for development activities. So remove this kind of barrier. Also, it has tries to introduce more competition and more promotion of innovation through interest rate capping. So it has said that interest rate capping be removed so that there be more competition and more promotion of innovation. The third snapshot is the proposal by NITI Aayog to bring the INVITS, Investment Infrastructure Trust, under Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Now, this is in context to the important policy of the government, the National Monetization Policy. Government has envisaged that revenue will be brought to the government if it has INVITS participating in monetization pipeline. How does it happen? Now, if government is trying to have a contract, suppose if this is road building and government has given this contract to a private agency, right? Road building, infrastructure building. Now, this private body which has to build road, it needs finances. One of the important mechanisms to have finances is through INVITS. Let me explain what it is. INVITS is Infrastructure Investment Trust. Now, this is a trust, this is a body in which people will be funding the projects, right? Now, as of now, can I, if I've got 1 lakh rupees, can I actually fund some of the infrastructure projects? No. But this is a fund in which a minimum threshold is there. Minimum threshold of say 10 lakhs, I think it was 10 lakhs, it is there. Now, people can contribute in this fund, and this fund can invest in this company, which is participating in infrastructure development. This is how government has had the National Monetization Pipeline plan. So, INVITs is one important mechanism through which investment into projects will happen, right? And this is where government has said and this is where the NITI Aayog has said. NITI Aayog has said that INVITS mechanism be made simpler for the retail investors. How can it be made simpler? So one mechanism is through giving tax incentives to people. So if people are investing in infrastructure investment trust, they be given less, they be imposed less taxes on them. Second, in case of bankruptcy, there be IBC norms, insolvency and bankruptcy code applicable for these trusts also. Why? Because whatever assets this INVITA has, it should go back to the people who have invested. So this is the main news, right? Now, so tax break, giving tax incentives to people who are investing in these products. This is one, and have user-friendly mechanisms for investment here. Now, presently the IBC does not cover trust. Now, if it is a trust, then it has to have a trustee, a person under which this whole thing is working, trustee. And right now, we need to have mechanisms in which the sponsor, the investment manager, the trustee and all, they can be transferred. So this is what happens when resolution happens, right? When a company is absolving, when it has got no money, it is bankrupt, probably its sponsor, its trustee, they have to be changed. Their name have to be changed. And this is why we need reforms in the law, so that the process of insolvency and bankruptcy code, this becomes more streamlined, right? In INVITS. Image of the day is on Hurricane Ida. This is happening in America, and this image has been taken by the robotic arm of a satellite, right, by a European Space Agency. Now, the hurricane was of such intensity that it is even more intense than Hurricane Katrina that happened 16 years from now. It happened largely around Louisiana state in the southeast part of America, and here the important river Mississippi, it actually started to flow in reverse direction because of the kind of intensity of this cyclone in this hurricane. The first term in news is Deeper Bill Wildlife Sanctuary. This is in context of the eco-sensitive zone which has been declared here. It is happening in Guwahati in Assam. Now, there is a quick context to it. The context is this, that in summers, this whole lake area expands, and in winter, it contracts. Why does it expand? It expands because this is a riverine wetland, and in summers, there is increased water flow in river Brahmaputra. So very simple, it expands, but because of this expansion, this encapsulates the Rani forest area also, and there is an important route for people to traverse. So vehicles also ply on this road. But animals, birds, they all have their routes. They have migratory routes also for animals, and many animals come to drink water. In summers, it expands, and in winters, it contracts, but still the animal keep moving, and therefore, this area, certain area of this particular zone has been declared as eco-sensitive. Now, eco-sensitive zone is important because it acts as a shock-absorbing zone near a reserved area. So if there is a reserved forest, if there is a restricted forest, there is where eco-sensitive zones are declared shock-absorbing zones, because they restrict human activity, they restrict human movement, they restrict human settlement, and that is why it has been declared. Very important to note is that this is the only site in Assam to be declared as the Ramsar site. Second term in news is in context to one of the doubts which I have had for a lot of time, and many of you also have had this doubt. Now, if I have a vehicle which has registration in Delhi, so DL, now can I take it to Maharashtra? And for how much time can I take it to Maharashtra? Because police will stop me there. Now, important to understand here is that these kind of registration fees are paid to the state governments, right? A particular state government. So regional transport organization belongs to the particular state. And therefore, if I'm paying taxes in a particular state and I take my vehicle to another state, what will happen to my vehicle? Will I have to pay some extra charges? Will I be under some particular kind of fine? And this is what doubt I had. Now, the government has sorted these kind of issues because earlier the law was such that if we are in that particular state, in a different state for more than 12 months, we will have to pay registration fees, some registration fees. It is not actually equivalent to the original registration fees. So we'll have to pay some registration fees in the other state also. But now the government has said that government will introduce a new BH registration series. BH stands for Bharat. Now people, government officials, private people who have offices in more than 4 states or union territories, they can have this BH series. Now this BH series starts with YYBH, 4 digits and then 2 alphabets. The 4 digits and 2 alphabets are unique to that vehicle, and BH stands for Bharat, and that means All India Mobility, and YY stands for the year in which the first time registration was done for the vehicle, right? So this is how people can move freely across the country without being questioned by the police for any amount of time. The third term in news is new species which have been added to India's faunal list. This has been done by Zoological Survey of India, and the most important things to note is that the most number of species which have been added are invertebrate, which are dominated by insects, and then we have pieces and reptiles. The states in which they have been added, the maximum number are Karnataka, Kerala, Rajasthan and West Bengal. So you got to note that Karnataka and Kerala are part of the Western Ghats and therefore highly biodiverse, also endemic species. And then we have West Bengal because of the presence of mangroves. Why Rajasthan? So this is a common misconception that since Rajasthan is a arid area, there could be less varieties. But see, we see a lot of varieties which have been explored in Rajasthan as well. India is one of the most mega biodiverse countries in the world, and therefore India will of course add new species to its faunal list. It is done by an important organization called the Zoological Survey of India in its report Animal Discoveries. The fourth term in news is West Nile virus. It is in news because Russia has warned that these climatic conditions at present, which will have heavy amount of rainfall and mild temperatures, they will propagate this West Nile virus with the help of the vector mosquito, right? So this is a fatal neurological disease and it does not have any cure as of now. And this is the one which spreads largely with the elder people. It can spread with younger people also, but it will spread more with the elder people. So West Nile virus has spread from Africa to Asia, Europe and Americas as well. The first editorial talks about if Taliban is ready to have conversations and engagements with India. The editorial starts by saying that the three important valid concerns for our country. First is the human tragedy, the human issues in Afghanistan, which India is also trying to cope up with. The second one is the kind of investment India has had in Afghanistan. First is emotional, and the second one is institutional and infrastructure investment. The third one is Pakistan-Taliban affiliation and relationship. In this context, the article says that just around a month back, United Nations Security Council had warned Taliban. It had warned Taliban against military action, and it had warned them that they should not create an Islamic state in the country. Now, both these references in the United Nations Security Council resolution have been dropped now. Imagine the kind of power Taliban enjoys in this particular state, right? Now, one important axiom it has mentioned, axiom means a universal truth. A universal truth in international relations is that there is no permanent friend. There is no permanent friend or enemy, only permanent national interest, right? So these are the important things in international relationships, right? And this is what is important between USA and Taliban and India and Taliban both. This is where the article proves that USA earlier was against Afghanistan, right? But now American president is also passing on information to Taliban about ISIS hideouts, about places from where attack in Afghanistan is happening. So this is where he has also been criticized. He's been asked, have you started to trust the Taliban? So he said, this is not about trust. This is not about mutual trust. It is about mutual self-interest. We have interest in Afghanistan and you also have interest in Afghanistan. And therefore, this is the way he has tried to defend his own judgment and actions, right? Now, his main intention is to prevent the regrouping of the international terror outfits in Afghanistan. For example, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. This is his agenda, America's agenda in Afghanistan. And what is the agenda of Taliban? To rebuild Afghanistan. And this is where both of them are trying to share trust and information, right? Similarly, India and Afghanistan also have got a relationship, right? What is the relationship? They both want less terrorism activities in Afghanistan. And India wants to keep Pakistan away from Afghanistan. So this is India's extra agenda in Afghanistan, right? This is where the article gets very interesting. It talks about particular ideologies. It says that ideologies, if accepted, will have contradictions. So if Taliban has a pan-Islamic ideology, it will have contradictions. It has given two examples, one of Islam itself, and the second one is on communist ideology. It says that pan-Islamic movement, which was initiated, later it got divided because of ethnicity of people, it got divided because of national interest of people, it also got divided because of various sectarian demands of the people, and therefore this pan-Islamic movement became cold. Similarly, communist ideology, it spread in USSR, it did spread in America, but it was later exploited by various wings to have factions, to have divisions in the same ideology. Now this is where Afghanistan, will it be an effective force under Taliban, under that ideology in which it talks about Islam and having an Islamic emirate? This is where the editorial says that India must hold back. India must hold back and look for an opportunity, an important opportunity in which Taliban starts to engage with India. And we have seen that India has started to engage diplomatically with Taliban. This is one of the latest news. The second editorial criticizes the national monetization pipeline. The editorial starts by saying that there are major ways of making investment in infrastructure. The first one is financing infrastructure by selling revenues. So this is what the government has done right now, monetization pipeline. The second one is raising share of infrastructure investment. So we can have more share in terms of finances in these kind of companies. And the third one is to have establishment of DFI, development financed institutions, right? The editorial says that the target for disinvestment and privatizations have failed. If the private organizations are not even keen to own these bodies, why will they want to have them only for a contract period of a small time? The government has planned to raise almost 3% of GDP in the coming 4 years. So 6 lakh crores, and this is very ambitious target, right? And this is where the idea of monetization, limited period licensing or lease can be questioned. Now, the editorial says that 2 important ways the government is trying to have this monetization is through PPP model or structured financing. It says that PPP infrastructure projects were successful in around 2000s. But what happened with them? We had good airport construction, good highways, but when it came to repayment, there was a crisis, a 2008 world crisis, financial crisis. And because of this, many of these organizations could not repay to the banks. So NPA increased and resolution issues were also there with these kind of institutes. The organizations which took loan. Why? Because this time there was increased crony capitalism, increased influence, and therefore resolution of these kinds of institutes also was in shambles and troubles. This is where the editorial talks about structured financing through INVITS, that is Infrastructure Investment Trust. Now, this Infrastructure Investment Trust is like a fund in which all retailers will be participating and funding an infrastructure project. These are booming during these times. These are like mutual fund. They're booming just because of booming stock market. But what will happen next time? What will happen in case there is a financial crisis? This is what happened in 1990s when there was investment initially, but Harshad Mehta's scam let down all the investment in infrastructure again, right? So this can again be a potential threat. It has also declared what threat could it be. So USA is already trying to taper the Federal Reserve, right? So easy money policy will not be easy anymore, and therefore the increased amount of financial investments, FIIs, FDIs in India, they might reduce in the coming times, and this might lead to the same situation as in 1990s. It also says that although yes, we are seeing rise in GDP levels, we are seeing the rise in the valuation of stocks, but are we actually seeing the rise in savings, the rise in investment? No, we are not. That is not the situation in the current market in the country, and therefore the article gives another innovative way to raise capital. It says that instead of monetizing these projects, why not monetize debt? Why not have a mechanism in which debt is taken by the government and they effectively start to working? So committed borrowings are required, right? They will have lower operation cost, they will have lower transaction cost. Also, the possibility of corruption, the possibility of crony capitalism will get reduced. The third editorial talks about India's journey in climate change mitigation. The editorial says that India is the only G20 economy which is compliant to its Paris Climate Agreement of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This is where it says there must be comparison between developed countries and India as well. America, which has recently rejoined the Paris Climate Treaty, it needs more finances, which is not having. Then Australia. In political spheres, whenever there is a conversation in Australia to have a cleaner source of energy, the Prime Minister loses votes. So there are political ramifications in the country. And France. In France, there are issues about the policy. For example, France has said that yes, it will bail out aviation sector and it will promote railway for domestic travel, but it has not initiated such policies for the same, right? India has done the right thing. It is on the right track to have 40% electric power by 2030 because it has already had 38% of electric power in power consumption by 2020 itself, right? India is initiating this by having post-pandemic reforms with climate change. So they are syncing the post-pandemic investment and reforms with climate change. So this is what they're doing. How are they doing it? By having afforestation measures, by having advanced chemistry cell battery, by having solar photovoltaic cell, and by having clean fuel and green measures. So these are the ways you can actually use in your answer how India is trying to help. India has also become the leader for developing economies for clean energy and also for developed countries. How? See, India has also led the International Solar Alliance. India has also led the Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure. Now this is very, very important, and India has also led the Solar Rich Countries Forum, right? So this responsibility of clean energy does not lie only with India. The other countries can learn from India, and because chiefly the responsibility to act lies on everybody. case study of the day is on education and learning. Now, these times when there is almost 100% enrollment ratio, that means almost all students get enrolled in the school, but they do not complete school. Also, the kind of efficiency in learning is not there. That means effectively they are not able to read newspapers, effectively they are not able to solve mathematical calculations, simple ones, addition and subtraction. And therefore, Pratham NGO has initiated something called as TARL, teaching at right level. So despite of the age of the individual, despite of what class they are in, they will be given the foundational skills required for one to grow, so that even if they leave education, they will reap the harvest, the benefits of education. For example, simple mathematical calculations, even if they get into the line of business. If you like our effort, if you like our video, share some love on us through likes, comments and shares. If you subscribe to the channel, you will receive timely updates. Thanks for watching.